Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where today it's time to get behind the wheel of a car that I think I might have been wrong about, but that's what I want to find out today. We're in New Jersey. In fact, you might recognize this location here at TopGear Imports. What a fabulous display here in their private supercar space, but this is the car of the day. The Maserati MC20 by 7Design, the MC20 Aria. Now this is an MC20 with a bit more sound, a bit more oomph, and of course this incredible exterior design package that you can see, wind tunnel tested, exposed blue carbon fibre. We're going to go through all the modifications and the details, but crucially, get back out on the road with this. Maserati's MC20, Maserati Corsa 2020, hence the MC20, the car that really is the start of a new era for the company. But when I drove one before the first time, about a year and a half ago, I wasn't entirely sold, but everybody seems to rave about them. So let's hop on board, take this out for a drive, and go find out what the MC20 Aria is all about. This is the car of the day then, the MC20 Aria by 7Design, and just look at it. We're going to go through all of the details and changes that 7Design have made to Maserati's supercar, but I have to confess that when I first drove an MC20 at the end of 2021, I wasn't blown away. I did not completely gel with the car back then. Admittedly, it was the end of the year, it was winter, the weather wasn't great. I think I was slightly under the weather, and it was also on winter tyres, which didn't help either. But this thing looks immense. We're going to go through all of the changes, everything that they have done to this car. But firstly, I have to mention where we are right now. Back here at TopGear Imports in New Jersey, this fabulous space. In fact, last time I was here, I went out with Sean in one of these, a Gembala Mirage GT in full skeleton form without bodywork into Manhattan. We also have the Golf Blue Carrera GT back there, 918 Spider, plenty of classic Porsches lining the display space as well, a couple of 4th gen Supras, some G-Wagon convertibles, you name it. But we're here today to check this out. And Peter from 7Design has very kindly brought it over here for me to share the experience with you today and to take a full look at this. And of course, for me to find out what I really think about it. Hopefully, if we get a break in the rain a little bit later on. Now, to run around the car, what is the MC20? It's Maserati's return to making a supercar. The 20, of course, because it was due for launch in the first half of 2020. I think we all know exactly what went wrong back then, but it features their Nettuno engine, the twin turbo V6, makes just over 600 horsepower in stock form, but I think arguably was fairly vanilla visually, and that is where 7Design have come in particular with the 7-piece carbon fibre exterior body kit. To name them very quickly, the extended lip around the front, the flicks here, the trident inserts over the hood, we'll take a look at those in a moment, the side sills with the Aria graphic, the aero scoop over the top, this huge ducktail spoiler at the back, and the ginormous full carbon fibre diffuser back here. Plus, you can tell we have a little change to the exhaust system as well, a stage 2 system, which also gives it an additional 20 horsepower over standard. Now, there's a lot to take in though. MC20, Maserati Corsa 20, following in many ways the MC12, the legendary sister car of the Enzo, but a very, very, very different thing. Now, Peter started with all of this with his love of his favorite car in the world, the Grand Sport MC Victory, which was quite a crazy and unusual thing. But obviously the MC20 was going to be the next step to start the 7Design world off with this limited kit named Aria, one of only 25 in total. About 10 have already been sold around the world, popping up on different cars. And I have to say, the color scheme for this particular example with the grey metallic paint contrasted by this royal blue carbon fibre is absolutely stunning. To take a look at these details a little bit more closely, it is a much more aggressive look at the front end. The way the grille scoops out, the extended splitter wrapping around, these additional flicks up at the side, plus the canards, of course, mounted to the bodywork. I mentioned the trident here. Of course, if you're familiar with the Maserati logo, you have that 3-pronged trident. That design is continued over the top of the front of the car here. As we then come around towards the side, the entire side skirts, which are ginormous pieces as well, with the Aria badging just down here, which was actually named after the founder's pet dog, who sadly passed away just before. A little bit of a fun story behind that. We then have the ducktail integrated over the top of the deck lid back here before the massive part of the diffuser. This is all one piece. Everything from above the plate frame surround all the way down is one single piece of carbon fibre, finished with the beautiful exposed carbon weave and this tint, which I can tell you from experience of these things is not easy to have pulled off. We also have the AL13 wheels, as you can see here. How many spokes are we? 10 spoke design. We've got the carbon ceramic brakes. We also have the optional carbon fibre exposed roof from factory. In fact, all cars have a carbon roof as standard from factory. And then inside, if we pop open the doors, we also have in here the fixed bucket seats. Very, very nice bucket seats. And the interior that we'll run through in more detail in just a moment as well, to talk you through what's going on with that. So there's a lot to it in terms of the design. You know, you spot the 3 details everywhere. You have the trident style prongs back there over the rear deck lid window. You have this aero scoop. So this is actually about helping with downforce. It adds a little bit more downforce in the rear section. This has all been wind tunnel tested. So it's not about feeding air through to the engine. Obviously there's no through pass there. It's about helping with airflow over the top of the car, giving a total of about 800 pounds of downforce, which is in the region of 350 kilos or so, as opposed to the standard car, which has significantly less. Now we need to hear it. So let's get this started, get ready to take it out and go find out what the MC20 Aria is like to drive. Time to fire up the V6. Let's take a listen. That is not bad. Cold start, loud and angry. You don't get that from a normal MC20. Oh wow, that sounds how a car like this should sound. And out we go, ready to experience this in the sunshine. Before we go anywhere, look at this carbon fibre work in the sunshine. That colour, the tinted lacquer, is spectacular. It pops against this paintwork wonderfully. This is really, really nice. But let's hop inside and go drive it. First up, we are heading out onto a bit of a highway because we're going to escape to the west to go and find some very nice roads to experience this. But I tell you what, and this is quite the surprise, my immediate feeling of this car being in the bucket seats with a little bit more exhaust noise, and remember I'm driving in GT mode at the moment, you have a toggle to change that, is that it's so much more about the experience and the emotion. And that's what the base car, the regular MC20, was really lacking for me originally. It just didn't give you that, oh my gosh, this thing is cool vibe, that feeling that, to be completely honest, I'm after when I drive these kind of things. So as we cruise, it still rides nicely like this. You know, it's smooth, it's calm. And in fact, just to show you here in the center, this is where you have turn it up into sport or turn it all the way into Corsa. Does the suspension, does the gearbox, there's a whole series of settings. But we'll warm up the car first as we play and discover all of this. Like this, it drives really nicely. It actually drives immediately. I've just been driving for about a mile. This is a pretty smooth start. You might not believe me, but when we started earlier back at TopGear Imports, it was atrocious weather outside. It was pouring with rain, overcast, horrendous. Now look at this. We've got blue skies, we've got twisty roads, we've headed slightly out of town here in New Jersey. This is absolutely spot on to enjoy a little bit more of this. Now I've been driving it so far mostly in GT mode, and this might be what I got a touch wrong the previous time, because in GT mode, I'm not going to pretend it is the most inspiring car in the world to drive. It's pretty docile, it's pretty calm, it's pretty gentle, and somebody like me wants a little bit more excitement out of it. I want a little bit more of a kick and a feel. You know, accelerating in GT, we've got the 8-speed dual clutch transmission, which works really very nicely, but it's not screaming, it's not really giving me all that much. When, however, you turn it into sport mode, obviously it will drop some gears, but I'm going to press manual just to take control of that myself. You get a whole load more emotion, a whole load more by way of sound. You can hear the turbos, the air being sucked in, you get some pops on the shifts. When you lift off fairly suddenly, you also get all sorts of different sounds and the blow off as well. And this is a really nice place to be driving this thing. It starts to feel a little bit more like a supercar. Of course, we've got a carbon fiber tub in here. This is seriously lightweight, clever technology in terms of manufacturing and materials, but it's also been declared by many to be a touch heavier than it should be. The claimed weight is not all that much. The reality from anybody who's popped one of these on some scales is that it's quite a lot more. And for a car with a pretty small V6 engine and a carbon tub, it's a little bit of a heavyweight, we could say. Anyway, there's a whole lot of power out of it. If I just slow it down for a second, drop down the gears, go slightly higher through the revs, you get that character from it, you get a little bit more involvement from it. We've got a whole lot of power. It's 630 PS, 621 brake horsepower, plus around 20 or so with the changes that have been made. Thankfully, no engine warning lights or anything like that, which you often get when you make changes to new, clever cars. And we're going past some lakes with some beautiful views around. This is exactly the kind of driving that a car like this is for. Steering is very much on the firm end, on the heavy end. I would say that I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of chunky steering wheels. If you drive any modern BMW or AMG, they all have the chunkiest of steering wheels they can possibly put on them, whereas for me, I prefer something a little bit smaller and easier to kind of handle and control and whatnot. But this is a car that I suppose is coming much more into its own as soon as we get somewhere where the roads flow a little bit more and I can put down a little bit more power and just enjoy it as we head through some of these villages out on these twistier roads. I think we have found ourselves some roads to enjoy a little bit more. Up in sport mode also, we have the firmer suspension set up in the car, but this is the kind of place to be with a car like this, right? Meandering through the trees, enjoying some of the sounds and some of the feel. The brake pedal is an interesting one because you really have to be very, very assertive with your input, very firm on the pedal to actually have it properly engaging, which takes a small bit of getting used to. Another thing that's a little bit unusual are the blinkers, the indicators, because once you've indicated and it's turned on, often you can just like press it or push it back in the same direction to stop it. In here, you have to turn it in the opposite direction, which just takes a moment to think about. If we go all the way up into Corsa mode, hold it to the right, this is where we get a completely different look on the dashboard actually. Very different setup, everything very much firmer, as you feel immediately, and just obviously set up for the racetrack. They've actually made this really cool race version of this thing, which is completely wild and out there. I think, obviously in this environment, we wanted in sport, possibly even in the softer suspension. When you're in sport, the button in the center here is for softening it. If you're in regular mode, it's for firming it. So it kind of goes the opposite depending what you're in, which is very Ferrari-esque in some ways as well. We've got a little plaque in the center here, Aria. This is car 00. It is the prototype car, if you will, the first one, the first setup of this. There are a few things I remember from driving the car before. At higher speed, the mirrors still shake around. Obviously that's not happening as we go through town, but the mirrors shake and vibrate a lot, and you also hear some wind noise. And if I hadn't driven the stock car, I would put that down to the aftermarket parts. But having driven the stock car, I can tell you it's exactly the same. The sounds that you hear when you're driving in this, the wind noise of it at higher speeds, and we're talking like 70 miles per hour on the highway, are sounds that the MC20 just makes. Clearly that's part of the design for whatever reason. Obviously I love this feel, looking out over the front scuttle, the fact that you can see those prongs of the tridents coming up over the arches looks really, really nice as well, and it's very low slung at the front end. You know, the car looks amazing. Very low, very wide, very aggressive. I think they did a really good job with that. And as I said before, the stock car just lacks some emotion, which you get a lot more of in here, but I do still think you could go further. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, we have a few turbo swooshes and sounds and things, but I want even more of them. Thankfully, the road is opening up a little bit more, so we can enjoy this and open up and use a few more of the revs. In fact, let me just drop it down to second gear again. Just rev it out more. Yeah, that's really where the character comes in. It's hard to kind of, I guess, fully explain, because any car like this is too fast, dare I say it. And this car just doesn't carry the noise. It doesn't have the aural drama when you're up towards the top end of the rev range. So I find it very difficult to be able to say, hey, listen, you know, this is what it sounds like when you're really gunning it, because on these kind of roads, if I were to do that, I would find myself in trouble very quickly. I mean, it's beautifully open and empty right here, so second gear, it's very quick. It's very, very, very quick, which is, hey, no bad thing, and it's a lovely place to be driving it. I just think it could have even more. I can see now why the previous time I felt that it wasn't the most lively car, because it was the same car but without the sound of it. I actually like the bucket seats a lot. I often get very sensitive to different seats, and I think these ones work really nicely for the car. They genuinely look the part, and they're not over the top like the bucket seats in the 296 or the SF90, for example. The Ferrari ones are a little bit more awkward to climb into, not quite so well padded all over. But yeah, we're driving along, enjoying it. It's a very comfortable car to drive, doing a very nice job of a long cruise, a long road trip, that kind of thing. But just enjoying the day and enjoying the ride in something that we know absolutely looks the part. Now, we need to talk about the results that this car has achieved in head-to-head tests. In fact, Evo Car of the Year, which is one of the most respected comparisons for drivers' cars that's ever existed, actually had this in first place last year, saying that it was the best car of the year, which slightly confusing because it had come out like 2 years before, so probably should have been included in the previous year's run. But the thing I think that led to that, which you're probably questioning because of my reaction to the car so far, is down to the ride. The suspension is wonderful. Now, I drove the car in Germany, which didn't have roads like this. German roads are beautifully smooth, and hence why German cars like my AMG GT Black Series, for example, are very firm, which means that in Germany, you don't need a car that rides so well because it doesn't matter so much. This car out here, though, is just silky smooth. I'm really, really impressed by how well it cruises down. I mean, this part of the road is obviously quite smooth anyway, but it cruises over some bumpy sections and handles them remarkably well. And I'm sure that's why when people have taken this thing out in the United Kingdom and driven it up, you know, through Scotland and whatnot, it's really excelled, because that's where that's going to stand out more than anything else. So I'm impressed very highly by the way that it drives on these kind of slightly more bumpy roads. But is that enough to counterweigh the fact that, to me, it's not as lively or as exciting as a 296 GTB GTS, or a GT4 RS, or I can't think what else would have been in last year's tests. You know, it's a heavyweight battle in terms of the different cars that were out there for that. And I'm not convinced that this is first place. And I'm not convinced that, for me, this would be the winner. Well, I am parked up with this, and I apologise for the bright sunshine, but to show you a little bit more around the car, I've just started it, so we have the notice on there. MC20 badge over towards the passenger side, lots of lovely carbon fibre, in fact, inside here. The plaque that we took a look at earlier on, a few of the controls I feel could be a touch fancier. They're very familiar if you know the other group cars. I like the carbon instrument binnacle cover up top, and I like that when you press the button just here for the door handle, obviously you have those dihedral doors that open up to reveal all of the chopped carbon that you have with the car, even the carbon plaques just on here on the outside. And we're in GT at the moment, but pop it back up into Sport, it sounds pretty good. Soft limiter, of course. So that's all you're going to get out of it in Sport. I suspect the same even if we turn it up into Corsa. There you can see that different display I mentioned earlier on. But again, yeah. Still sounds cool. The flutters and things that are going on with it. We've got the Sonus Faber sound system as well. The nice tread plates down at the floor, wireless charging pad that I've been using for my phone just inside here to make sure it is charged up for our onward journey, and all of these lovely details and embroideries and stitching and things in the seats as well that I mentioned. It's just finished quite nicely. Could be even nicer, but it's not a bad place to be inside here. And then, of course, all of the different infotainment controls that you would expect to have in such a machine. I like the shift paddles affixed to the column. I like that they're quite long carbon fibre paddles inside here, which certainly add to the drive and experience of it. But a press of the button and we have quietness. So let me step out and just give you some final thoughts. You've always got to love a bit of supercar fanfare with doors like this, as they should be. And this has been a fascinating experience to drive the MC20 in such a different setting. Last time around was more motorway and town. Today has been out on some twisty roads. The handling feels great. The steering feels good. The ride quality is amazing. That's probably my biggest takeaway from today's drive. I would just still like a little bit more excitement. I'd still love a little bit more pizzazz or something from the car to really kind of cement its spot. As I've said, it's a great car. Is it car of the year? Probably not for me, but this looks the part and it dials up what's already a very pretty looking car and makes it aggressive, makes it mean, makes it show that it absolutely means serious business. You know, things like these, that's an option. You could go without that, for example, if you find that design a little bit too much. I like the trident nod of it. I particularly like this blue carbon fiber. The color of this in the light right now, is just stunning. It's spectacular. It looks incredible. So it's been a really enjoyable car, and I'm very, very pleased to have driven it with the sunshine out on us, because like I say earlier on, it was a whole lot colder than this. We were wearing jackets and the rain was pouring down. So thankfully that subsided and we were able to go out and enjoy this, to drive this properly. One thing I mentioned earlier, by the way, by saying they all have the carbon roof. They all have a carbon roof, it's just not normally exposed. You pay for the optional upgrade to have it in exposed carbon, but technically on any MC20, if you sand down the roof, you'll have the visual carbon fibre underneath, I'm led to believe. Hopefully that I'm not just making that up. But today has been cool. This thing is mega. It's a big thanks to 7Design for bringing it over. I think for MC20 owners out there, if you want to make your car stand out a little bit more, give it an extra something, that's a pretty good way to go about it, to add this full kit. And I'm sure it's the start of many exciting things to come as well for Peter and the team at 7Design going forwards with everything that they're going to be doing with different cars in the pipeline, which I can't quite share with you yet, but I'm sure it's only a case of time. That's it for now though. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. It's a big thanks as well to the team at TopGear Imports, to Sean and Sonny and the guys for having us along as well. And of course, to drive this. That's it for now though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!